Hello, so I wanted to give you some guidance on Foundations Academic Practice, and I hope you're doing alright. So the first thing to say is that for Foundations Academic Practice, you guys would have been given a lot more support. The fact that we've not been able to give you seminars and to kind of finish off our face-to-face contact with you has meant that really for Foundations Academic Practice, you haven't been given a lot of the guidance that you would normally get. So the important thing to say here is that as tutors, we're able to use a thing called contextualized marking. So what this means is that we can take into account the fact that you haven't been given that kind of help when we're marking it. So it doesn't mean that we can be generous with the marks, but we can take that into account. So it's really important that even if you feel like you don't know what you're doing with this assignment, that you give it a go and that you submit something. Because that gives us the opportunity to kind of take into account what you haven't had and to kind of give you a mark based on this kind of change of circumstance. So that's really the important message, is that even if you know that what you're submitting isn't your best work, make sure that you put something in. Do the best that you can, but do submit something. That's important. Okay, so in order to give you more support, I've added in to the guidance document, which is our kind of really important support for you to kind of know what to write about in your academic practice portfolio. I've added in a little bit more structure. So this section here is worth looking at right now. So if you're not exactly sure what to write about in terms of the academic or professional skills that you explore, dive down into this. So, but I'll go right back to the beginning. The overall format is 4,000 words. It should be in something like Word, PowerPoint or a PDF so that it can be uploadable to Turnitin. Don't include videos in your PowerPoints because it will make it too big. So your introductions should look at the kind of goals that you've set yourself, the kind of skills, whether they're academic skills or more soft skills, kind of things like communication or teamwork, or kind of wider professional skills like time management. Pick 3 or 4 of those and start to set out what things you did to develop those skills in that introduction. It's quite a short introduction, 250 words, and then move on to picking one of those learning goals, one of those skills, and describe it more fully in like your first section. And so the main content should be 3 or 4 of these skills or learning goals that you explore, and in each of these sections state what it is that you're exploring. So what is the skill or learning goal that you're going to talk about in the section, and then define that skill in a context of university or education. So if we give an example, maybe you're talking about critical thinking as a skill, so you've set yourself a goal to develop critical thinking. Well, that could mean lots of different things, but what does it mean for a university student or an educator? Why is it important for them to have that skill? And in this part of defining the skill, make sure to bring in literature to support these kind of definitions. To give you an example, you might say pick student teamwork. So if I wanted to find literature, I might put in a Google Scholar search like defining student teamwork, higher education, and putting that into Google Scholar or the MMU library search will bring up different documents, and it's quite likely that you'll find one that contains a bit of a section like this, where in the course of looking at developing and assessing teamwork skills, there's a section on really defining the terms. What is teamwork? So try and find whatever skill that you pick, try and find something that gives it a definition for, here we've got the context of like colleges, so something linked with education. So once you've got that definition there and you've brought in literature, then really describe what goal you set yourself to develop in this area, the kind of activities that you carried out in order to develop it, and then how doing those activities helped you to develop those skills, and what you've learned about this area by doing the activities. And then finally, share something on what you would do to improve the area kind of next year. So kind of, you've done some of the activities, but what would you identify as something that needs more work, and then set yourself a goal, some activities to develop it next year. Or you might have thoughts on how you might put that skill into action as an educator. You might think, all right, well, what I've realised is this type of skill is really important for an educator for this reason, and you could give an example about what you want to do and kind of why it's important. So I've also added in an example of different skills that you might explore. These were kind of within the PowerPoints of Foundations of Academic Practice, but I've just put them into a table. Some of them are academic skills, some of them are what we might call soft skills or 21st century skills around collaboration, creativity and communication, and some are more kind of general professional or life skills: initiative, contingency planning, networking, resilience, balancing your university and life pressures. So hopefully this gives you, if you're not sure, maybe you've got a couple of skills already but you're not sure, these might help you as well. And then more generally, the plan kind of goes over examples of activities that you might draw on, and I think it's important to structure your work around the skills rather than the activities. So it might be that in exploring kind of teamwork, you draw on one or two different activities that you carried out. More advice about what you should include and what you should leave out when you're exploring it, what to write, what not to write. And then the final section is future directions. It's a bit of a summary of your professional goals looking forward, and it's also kind of a good way of working out, well, what support services are out there in a university context that could help me to develop this a bit further. So make sure that you cover that learning outcome in this final section. If you haven't already accessed support services that the university give you, and tutorials and kind of contact with your tutor is a support service. If you haven't already covered that, then make sure to do a bit of research about how you could develop skills a bit further using what's available to you. So this final section gives you an idea of how to structure that conclusion, and this is really kind of looking forward. What potential paths have emerged for you as a future educator and as a student? Can you pick a possible future professional pathway or specialisation that interests you? It's kind of setting out your possible future path as an educator, asking you to think about what you've picked up from this year in terms of your interests or speciality, and to kind of project forward into what you might want to do into the future. So hopefully that's helpful. Just want to restate that it's important to give this a really good go. The important thing to do is to really try and put down some of the skills that you've been working on, the activities that you've done, and then to link that into the future as well. And if you're not sure how to bring in theory, then this idea of linking to definitions within a student and university context is really important. Do ask questions, so either ask questions on Moodle in the announcement section for Foundations of Academic Practice, or contact me, Mick Chesterman, mick.chesterman@mmu.ac.uk, or contact your tutor. So I hope that answers your questions, but if it doesn't, then feel free to ask more questions. Thanks a lot.